Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. We have a wonderful webinar for you with Linda Novak from Fayetteville Technical Community College. But before we begin, I do have a few housekeeping items. The first is there are several of us on the call today, so in order to minimize the amount of background noise, if you haven't already done so, if you could please press *1 on your phone, and that will mute your line so we can hear Linda loud and clear throughout the presentation. Also, we understand because your lines are going to be muted that you will have questions, so we encourage you to enter questions in one of two ways. One, through the chat, and you can see that in the control panel in your meeting burner, or also through the Q&A panel, which is also found on your screen through meeting burner. So you can enter in your questions in either of those areas, and we will make sure to address those and answer those at the end of the presentation. We reserved about 10 to 15 minutes for that. Also, I am recording today's presentation, so you will get an email with a link to that recording and also get a copy of the slides that Linda is going to present today. So you can review if you need to, or go ahead and forward it on to colleagues who may have missed today's webinar. So with that, I am going to pass it on to you, Linda. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Megan. Greetings to everybody. I'm very excited to talk with you today about our journey with school chapters and how we use ePortfolios at Fayetteville Technical Community College to assess student learning. The items today that we're going to discuss, I'll tell you a little bit about Fayetteville Technical Community College and about our journey to electronic portfolios for FTCC. We'll talk about how we selected school chapters and the process that we went through, what it was like for us to implement electronic portfolios, and then some lessons learned. That's always the fun part because hindsight is the best. I'm going to do a little demonstration for you about a portfolio that a student had submitted, and then we'll have time for question and answers. Fayetteville Technical Community College is located, of course, in Fayetteville, North Carolina. We're home to Fort Bragg. Our college has an average 12,000 head count per semester, and we do award associate degrees, certificates, and diplomas. I am an early childhood education instructor. We have 3 associate degrees that we award. We have 7 certificates and 2 diplomas. We do use the portfolios in all 3 of our associate degree programs. So we did have a journey to electronic portfolios, and I'm really excited. I'm so sorry about that pop-up. And I'm excited to share what our challenges were and what our excitement was as we went on this path. Our program was beginning the national accreditation process through NAEYC, the National Association for the Education of Young Children. So we were attempting to improve our 2-year degrees, and we wanted something that would be cohesive. Another challenge, of course, was that we wanted to prove that learning in a cohesive format. And the last challenge that was presented to us, we had just implemented a capstone course in our 2-year degrees. This meant that prior to 2010, we were using a system of co-op learning, cooperative learning placements, and a seminar class. And that combined in a manner that previously was considered to be a capstone, or student teaching, or a practicum, whatever language you use in your programs. So there was a tsunami of events that happened. We were on our journey to accreditation. We had a new capstone course, and because of accreditation, we were trying to prove that our students were learning in a method that we could present professionally and that was cohesive and that was standard-based. Prior to looking at ePortfolios, our students were using PowerPoint. Now, there were a lot of challenges with PowerPoint. We found we couldn't manage any of our data from our programs, but the biggest problem is actually that our students were not proficient in using PowerPoint. They are early childhood education students, and we found ourselves having really to teach how to use PowerPoint. And it became no power and pointless, as they say. So we also had no way to align our student outcomes to the standards that we were tracking using PowerPoint. We were very frustrated with this method because as a capstone course, we wanted our students to leave with a product that showed a culmination of learning on their end. We felt it represented the student, it represented our program, and it represented our college too. If they would show that PowerPoint, for instance, for a job interview, I was concerned and our department was concerned they were going to be judged on their ability to use PowerPoint. And that really wasn't the point of our capstone course. So we started to investigate ePortfolios. Would that be the right solution for Fayetteville Tech? Can it help us overcome our challenges? Would it meet our criteria that NAEYC accreditation was presenting to us? And we had a large discussion about, well, what is an ePortfolio? What would it mean to our students? And what would it mean to our program and to the college? So we wanted our ePortfolio to reflect the students' understanding of early childhood education, but it really needed to be based on the NAEYC standards so they could reflect back over their learning throughout the degree, and it would be in a cohesive format. I'm going to probably use that word cohesive a lot because that is what we kept coming back to over and over. We wanted a product that was cohesive. We needed a plan. We wanted to make sure we could prove learning to the site reviewers that came to visit us when our program submitted application for accreditation. There needs to be a plan. Does our program prove learning based on standards? How could we show that? We wanted a way to collect data. We wanted a way to collect the information, the assignments, the articles, all the work that the students were doing, but we also wanted to collect data that we were proving learning based on the NAEYC standards in our program. Of course, there is that fun word, assess. We have to assess everything in higher education, and assessing a PowerPoint was horrible. So we thought that an ePortfolio would give a format that could allow us to assess student learning, assess how are we teaching these standards. Are the assignments that we're using learning? Are they learning the standards from our assignments? I know as an instructor I often wondered, I know they're doing these assignments, but do they really understand that there's a point to their learning, that this is a standard, that this is important for them? And then I need data for our NAEYC yearly reports, so we have to be assessing our learning and we have to have data. The last component of an ePortfolio is Connect. And this was sort of an afterthought for us, if I'm being very honest today. We really needed a way for our students to connect to the NAEYC standards. We felt it gave them a greater connection to their profession as a whole. And we felt it also connected them to our program. But then we learned after the fact that they were using their portfolios to connect to others and to connect into a job market. We had a lot of discussion in our department about the purpose of our ePortfolio, and I hope this slide reflects all the components that we faced and we discussed. We wanted to make sure that it did benefit our students. Believe it or not, our students, we are on their side and we want them to be successful. So we wanted them to have a place where they could reflect on their work. They could show growth over time. My students currently are now in the process of submitting their portfolios for this semester. And they have asked me, I don't really like that very first assignment I put in there. Could I redo it? Now I know better. And I always tell them, well, no, we want you to have your journey reflected in this ePortfolio. And it's important for you to see your growth over time. And you can connect, well, I remember learning that back in my intro course, and it was important. They could plan. They can plan another pop-up. I am so sorry. They can plan their academic pathway, and they can look at their educational goals and their achievements. It also gives them a chance to develop a method to reflect and assess their quality of work. They also developed a very keen eye for the standards. They could look at an assignment and say, oh, this does match Standard 3 and I understand why. So they developed really good self-assessment abilities. And the students also had a way to share their knowledge. What we learned is that after our students created their portfolio and turned it in for their grade, they still could access school chapters for a certain amount of time. And they were creating multiple PDF versions of a portfolio. One of my students actually said, I really didn't like the work you required me to put in. I wanted to put in some work that I was really more excited about doing. So she went and created a different PDF version. And School Chapters allows the students to make several versions of a portfolio that they can keep forever and ever. We didn't anticipate that part, to be honest, when we started. We were really interested in proving those NAEYC standards and assessing and having the students leave with a final product. So the ability for them to share their portfolio in other formats and versions was an unexpected but pleasant surprise. Now we had some benefits too, believe it or not. We really got the students to think about the NAEYC standards, that it was important, and it meant something to them. So we really felt like we were not just walking through the paperwork and the mounds and mountains of paperwork that a national accreditation requires. We really felt that it made the learning meaningful to our students. It allowed us to take our rubrics and the objectives on our rubrics and prove that we were actually teaching them. The biggest thing for me, and I will sound a little bit excited about this, is that I was the person who was getting all of these rubrics from our key assessment classes. And I was painstakingly putting them into Excel spreadsheets and calculating all this data from many sections of 5 different courses. So the fact that School Chapters contains the rubric for these classes, and they can shift, we can take those rubrics, and now School Chapters has become the calculator of rubrics. And I can't tell you how excited that made me. I was so thrilled to not have to sit and enter data into spreadsheets because we needed the data for our accreditation reports but it was so painstakingly time-consuming for me to have to enter each of those rubric numbers for each student for almost 50 sections. It was absolutely crazy. We also liked that it made our students communicate better because they had to think about what they were putting in their portfolio. So we thought that was a really good vehicle for our students. The communication skills are important, but I have to tell you, I'm going to go back. The rubrics and the fact that I don't have to do math anymore, that was awesome. We really didn't think about it at the time, but our college, of course, was undergoing accreditation at the same time last year as we were undergoing our accreditation from NAEYC. And we are always called on to be accountable. And outcome-based accreditation proves that our students are learning to standards. We could demonstrate this in a measurable way. We have a final product. I saved the PDF files from selected students to show around the college and at other two-year institutions for early childhood instructors. This is how our students are proving that they learn. And it has helped me to make some friends with some other colleges and university faculty that I now consider many of them to be friends for life. But it also, more importantly for the college, ensures that we are meeting our mission and our goals and that there are student learning outcomes that we are actually really meeting.
Linda, real quick, sorry, before you move to the next slide, for those of you that are on the call, if you could press *1 on your phone, we're getting a little bit of background noise, so if everybody could mute their line by pressing *1, that would be much appreciated. Thank you so much. Sorry, Linda.
That's okay. Okay, I heard lots of clickings. That's great. First, our committee to select an ePortfolio was really our department. And we had our criteria defined before, as I talked about. We wanted it to be user-friendly for the students. We wanted it to not cost very much. We wanted to be user-friendly. So make sure you define what you want in your ePortfolio. We looked at many solutions. There were several other ePortfolio products out there that we looked at, and frankly, they were very pricey for our students. And one I had used at another institution, and to use one of my favorite words, it was a beast. It was way above what we felt was appropriate for a community college. So we followed these 3 steps. One hint I'd like to give everybody out there is that make sure that people on your selection committee do have a vested interest. Think about how you're going to sell this product to the students. You may need to include the bookstore. That's our vehicle for selling the access to school chapters. And I will talk about that in a later slide. So the selection process was our department looked at 3 products. And we wound up with school chapters for several reasons. I started to talk about these prior in that we needed to have a way to put our rubrics from the 5 key assessment courses that we use with the NAEYC standards. It had to be based on those. And the other 2 products were not as flexible as school chapters. We found there was no way to really customize them to our needs based on the standards. We wanted it to be relatively easy for the teachers and the staff and the students to use. We don't need another beast in the classrooms or in our department, so it had to be easy. We also wanted it to be intuitive with the final product looking professional, not one of those crazy PowerPoint presentations that we had been used to seeing. And we wanted the cost to be reasonable as well. And school chapters is very reasonably priced, and because we went through the bookstore, our students can use their financial aid funds to purchase the school chapter's access. So once it got down to this decision, school chapters was really a very, very easy solution for us. The idea that it could be customized and the idea that our rubrics would be used, and the fact that once you get into putting information into the portfolio, it is very easy and it makes sense to the students. Now, for those of you that are familiar with NAEYC, we've put 3 standards up here, although there are 6 that we have to prove. So for Standard 1, which is to promote child development and learning, the assignment that we selected for this was our preschool classroom design from our intro class to early childhood. So we felt that the development of a classroom design would allow them to prove that they understood how children learn and develop. If you don't have your classroom arranged appropriately, you're going to have problems in early childhood. So we had a rubric and we had a good assignment built for Standard 1. For Standard 2, that's to build family and community relationships. The assignment that we used for this one was their culturally respectful menu. They had to develop a month's menu that was respectful of many different types of families and cultures and customs. And we felt that that showed how we tied families, community, and the program together. And that was a good way for us to prove Standard 2. Standard 3 is to observe, document, and assess to support young children and families. So we picked a play observation from a 200-level course, which was children with exceptionalities. So the assignment was to observe a child with special needs in a natural environment. So any advice I would give today is that make sure your key assessment assignment really does meet each standard and that the focus of that assignment and the rubric is focused on that standard. And that way it's really easy to put it into school chapters and it's easy for these students to understand, why am I creating a classroom design? What does that matter? What if I'm not going to be a preschool teacher? Well, understanding that an environment is really important to how children develop and learn. You've learned Standard 1. So we think that made a good link for them. This is a sample of our rubric that we use in our capstone course. And I have a second slide to show you here in a minute that defines everything. We have a checkbox on the first square that shows them they have to have included the culturally respectful menu, the play observation, and the developmentally appropriate classroom design. I usually get asked, are you regrading that assignment? Well, no. They've submitted it in another class. So when they get to 284, which is the capstone course, they have already put in several assignments. So when they get to us at the end, it's basically they are filling in the very last parts of all the standards that they have not met from previous classes. So if you would look at the second line where it says their lesson plan curriculum content, we have picked 5C as our standard for that one. To get the very good points, the most points, it has to show an in-depth connection to appropriate learning standards. And they have to design, implement, and evaluate meaningful curriculum for children. So they attach their lesson plan, one of the lesson plans they have to teach in their practicum experience, to this standard. I've moved to the second page. For 6D, they have to include a reflective journal from their capstone course. They journal every week. And we think that reflective and critical perspectives on early education was met in 6D. And you can read through the rest of the components. I'll just share with you, when our site review team was here from NAEYC, we did demo a portfolio for them from one of our students. And I will tell you that we only began using school chapters in January of this year. So our site visit was in March. But we had students who had completed their portfolio assignments, and we demoed it. The site team was blown away. They said, this is a great way to show how students are learning. And one comment made by one of the reviewers was, you still have not realized the full implication of the students leaving you with an ePortfolio. So having all their work together in one PDF file that the students can take with them, I think that was a big part of our receiving national accreditation, in that we had an ePortfolio based on the NAEYC standards, and the students understood, why do I have this attached to that standard? And then we just have the school chapter staff is great to work with. They take our rubrics and they put them into the ePortfolios, and you can see, because we have points assigned to the standards, when we grade in school chapters, then all those calculations happen, and that's the part that I'm very happy with, if I haven't told you that already. So what happened from all of this? Well, we've had really, really good results. We were accredited for 7 years with no conditions from our site visit. We really feel that our students' quality of learning has gone up. They understand, oh, those standards you keep talking about, oh, those standards that we see on our syllabus, oh, those standards that are on all our rubrics, they mean something. 5C means something. So they understand, yes, they are important. And the portfolio helps them to look at them over and over and over again. There was no doubt they have learned them while they're here. We did have a couple lessons learned. We really should have involved the bookstore from the beginning. There was some confusion from the bookstore staff that was given to our students, in that they thought they had to have something, an access code, they had to have something, and our students were confused that this was linked in their Blackboard online component of the class. So if you were taking a class face-to-face, or if you were taking a class online, you simply clicked on our Tools menu button, and there was school chapters. So really the students didn't have a lot to do. The bookstore was confused, but we have worked with them. So lesson learned there. Feel free to benefit from our lack of thinking ahead. Lesson 2 is that there are really good instructions from school chapters that they give you. They're pre-prepared, but what we did find that our students, as community college students are, they need to hear things and see things, multiple intelligences. So I created some audio files based on the specific rubrics for the course. So when they were entering their culturally respectful menu into school chapters, I walked them through the rubric. You actually put the weekly menu under this standard. You need to put the handbook from your menu into this standard in school chapters. So that's just something that we have learned as an institution, that the instructions from school chapters, they're really great. Our students needed that extra help with individual rubrics and what went where. I hope that makes sense. What I'd like to do now is I have a portfolio from a student that was done this past spring semester. And I'd like to show you parts of it so you can see what happens. They enter all the required assignments, journals, lesson plans, reflections, whatever we've required based on the standards. And then they simply click a button. It says Generate PDF. Then the students have a PDF file of what they have created. Now please keep in mind, I'm going to move this over. Hopefully you all can see this on your screen. This is the table of contents.
Yeah, we can see it, Linda. I just wanted to remind folks to press *1 on their phone if they could mute their lines. That would be great. We have a little bit of background noise coming in, so thank you.
Okay, thanks, Megan. When they generate the PDF file, it actually creates this table of contents. And the table of contents is based on, of course, the NAEYC standards. It gives them links to the evidence that they have added. It creates headers. So standard 1 comes up, done. This student, to prove knowing and understanding of young children's characteristics and needs, she took a picture of the preschool classroom that she was in, that she actually worked with the supervising teacher to help rearrange. She was really fortunate because this student, this supervising teacher, allowed her to arrange a classroom so she could see, you know what, I did this on paper. Does this work in the real world? And here's a picture of some beautiful children playing at the table in the classroom. So when she has this portfolio to share at a job interview or perhaps as admission into another college, they'll see, well gosh, this student actually worked with young children. That's a plus. So then she can click on the file, and the design that she did will, I'm sure, open here in just a minute. Well, it worked a half hour ago. It does show you her preschool classroom design. And my apologies because it was working before. Then, of course, it goes down to the next standard, and this shows her lesson plan where the student was actually exploring the environment around her, and she talks about it in her journal. She talked about how they were playing outside and they went over and wanted to be a monster truck, and she realized, oh, I actually have to watch children to see what they're doing. And again, we're still in Standard 1. She took a picture of part of her lesson plan to demonstrate that this was a developmentally appropriate way to help children learn. That's one of my favorite pictures.
I hate it doing that. What makes it do that?
I may linger on that one for a moment, and there's another picture of the children painting with sponges. So we're moving, of course, into relationships, and there's more pictures of the children. Let's see if this one's going to open for me. Well, apologies that did not work, but usually when I click on it, up comes their menu. So every file that they save, they click on and it pops up and you can see it. So if you can get the idea, this is what their journal looked like. Their ePortfolio looked like. I read the word journal coming up here. It looks professional. It allows them to include different documents. It allows them to comment on it. And I think for our first attempt at using an ePortfolio, this student did a great job because they had to go and backfill from previous classes since we said, oh, remember, you need that assignment from 119. Well, they had to go and find them from previous classes. Our students that are now in the loop are very used to using school chapters as their portfolio. I can pull that back if there are questions about it. A couple thoughts I always just want to include about the portfolio is that the students can link to it, of course, through their Blackboard class, but they can submit the PDF into Blackboard if they want to submit a file for a grade. But this semester we're piloting grading the rubrics right in school chapters. So a really neat feature this semester that we're using is the students enter the required information from the rubric. They click a submit button, and then it comes to me and I can grade it. The neat feature is that if I think they need to do something differently, I can send it back to them. They can fix it and then resubmit it back to me again. So we have now moved to actually working within the student's portfolio. I did this presentation last week, and the question was, can the students share their portfolio with other people or with their fellow classmates? We as an institution have elected not to do that, but I know that the capability is there for students to share their portfolio with their classmates if they choose. So I'm going to stop right here. We can go back and revisit some slides, and I'll throw it to Megan. If there were questions that I could talk some more about, I'd be happy to.
Sure. So I don't see any questions in the chat or Q&A panel. So if anyone does have any questions at this time, please feel free to go ahead and enter those in. We'll hang on the line here a few minutes to see if anyone has any other questions. And just a note too, while we're waiting for people to enter questions, School Chapters does allow you to share through LinkedIn as well. So there's a LinkedIn button within the platform, so they can actually share their portfolio on their LinkedIn site. And if you would like a personalized demonstration, you can contact us. Just go to schoolchapters.com and just fill in the contact us form, and we will be more than happy to schedule a personalized demonstration with you all. There was a question that came in from Kinga Jacobson, and what is the cost of the service?
The cost to our institution was $39 for the students. Our bookstore tacked on $10, so the students pay $49 with their financial aid. I'm not going to name the other systems that we looked at, but they were about $150 a year for our students. So $49 for them to have a year access was awesome. One other thing I should mention is that a student can be taking 3 or more EDU classes in a semester. They can access their school chapters with that one purchase in all their classes that are hooked to school chapters. We have 5 classes right now that are linked to school chapters, and those are our classes that we submitted to NAEYC for our key assessment courses. I went back to the rubric again on the screen just to note that you can see there are the classes on here. There's a lot from 284 that they're putting in this class, but you can see we haven't used all of the 6 standards and substandards in this particular rubric. They're actually putting them in from other courses up here. So when they come to us, their portfolio is almost full except for a few of the standards that they will be loading in their capstone course. So the students can access the portfolio from multiple classes, but they don't pay for it for each class. They pay for one access, and then they can get in through multiple classes. I hope that makes sense.
Some of the students want it, but they're not going to be here maybe another 2 semesters. Can they put anything
They
in
can
there?
also put other stuff in there.
All right,
It doesn't have to be,
yeah, because all
right
of them,
now,
all of a sudden, all of them want it now.
it's got to be matched to the standard, but there's a way, and I asked her to do the next help video. That link that I sent you is the first basic thing, and I asked her to do the next help video to show them how to put additional content in that's not linked to.
Okay, that's a really good point in that what we tell our students is, since we're here home to Fort Bragg, we tell them you can add as many files as you want to the portfolio under the Organized button. But they just wait there. They're waiting to be deployed, we say. Until you've aligned them to a standard, you have just basically saved all the work you want to save in your Organized file. So you can have many, many artifacts in there, many assignments, many journals, and then it doesn't do anything until you align it to a specific standard. And that was one way our students were creating multiple versions of their portfolio once it had been submitted for grading. And they really love that.
They download any things that they want under Organize.
Okay.
And so all that stuff is in there. Something else, but they have to match it to a standard, an AV standard.
And that's why our students will go back. You can easily delete something from a standard, and then you can put in another document that you think best represents you in whatever venue you're wanting to use the portfolio for.
Okay, great. Thank you for answering that. Are there any other questions? I don't see any in the chat, so if there are more questions, please make sure to enter them in now. We'll hang on the line here a few minutes. Or if your line is muted, go ahead and press *1 to unmute your line, and you can feel free to talk out loud, and we'll definitely hear you. So either enter them in or press *1 to unmute your line.
I'm going to put my information back up there too. Please feel free if you want to just call my office or email me. I have just loved using school chapters. We were so happy to come across them. We ran into them as a vendor at the North Carolina AEYC conference, just as we were in the midst of choosing our ePortfolio. And we have been just so overwhelmed and so pleased with how quick the response has been to our needs. They have customized things for us that we have asked. I couldn't find a button once, and the next thing I went back in and I just talked to one of the staff there, and then the button was bigger. And I went, that's really cool. So I am very happy to talk to anybody if you'd like to in more detail about how we use this in our program or how we use this in our journey towards accreditation. I can't say enough that we thought it was really important as part of our accreditation process.
Okay, well with that, I don't see any other questions in the queue, Linda, so we're going to give folks 15 more minutes back in their day. We're ending a little bit early. But again, I am recording the webinar, so I will send you all a link to the recording. And if there's no other questions, it doesn't look like there are, have a great day, and thank you so much for joining us.